Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So if we were doing that game, where you actually had to take yourself back, let's say, say 10 million years, say, yeah, uh, 10 million, yeah, say 10 million years, yeah. So you've got self-awareness, like you're not just based on instinct. Um, so you're going to take yourself in here into that era, and what have you got? Yeah. Now, there's a few things you can't really take with you because they don't appear for another 10 million years later. Yeah, and these would be determinism. You in this, if you want to look at this sort of uh, engagement here that we can go through together, then you can't take determinism. Yeah, in other words, there's nothing to tell you that anything is fixed. There is nothing to tell you anything is fixed. Yeah, so um, that would be one. The other one would be, let's say, the extent of generalizations. Yeah, uh, I mean, generalizations or ideas as distinct from, let's say, the particular engagement you would have within that person's field. Yeah, we can speak about fields. We can speak about what we can't bring in, but we can also speak about stuff that we can bring in. Yeah, and you might see a balance here. You might see a bit of a deficit going on. Yeah. So we can't take determinism. We can't take generalizations. Like just made up. If you see one bear or two bears, or you might be able to speak about wolves because they move in packs. Yeah, and then bear, but you may not connect bears because you might see a bear one and then another one. Yeah, but with wolves is different. Yeah, they generally move out in the pack animals, and so that's where your generalization would be. Wolves. And everybody knows what wolves are. Yeah. Because you've got that, let's say, um, that regularity and resemblance, and that regularity, Hume's regularity and resemblance, is a great man at this point. Yeah, um, yeah. So right, so you got so you've got regularity and resemblance because all these sort of things in front of you, like they all look like similar. Yeah, you can discern difference and you can discern similarity or semblance, not same. It cannot be the same. This law of contradiction. You can't have nothing's the same. Yeah, but so you might have you got wolf, 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 and then you got an elephant, and then wolf, 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 wolf. Yeah, but you're going to spot the elephant, okay, and you're going to spot the sameness, yeah, because that pretty much kicks in quite a bit because that disparity, that what we call differentiation, yeah, difference, and that's really quite a very really good time because when we perceive our worlds, we perceive differences, yeah. As an appearance, we're just talking about appearance at the moment. So that's what we'll bring in here. Just appearance, with no with no concept of well, we listen. It's very difficult to say what you have and haven't got because the physicality is there, but the formalization of it is, way down the line later on. Um, so basically, oh gosh, yeah, and for a man, yeah, I just want to say, when I talk about what you can bring in, yeah, well, I was thinking about for a man. I don't know if I've mentioned that tiles, the floor tiles and the patterns that basically, if you examine yourself, and if it's just me, it's just me. But if you examine yourself and you perceive, if you focus, your perception is a little bit different from, let's say, some possible objective uh, measure. Like there's no 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, like in blocks of that conceptualized sort of meter, if you like. Yeah, it really what it is that everything's squeezing up. Yeah, this is time dilation, yeah, because it's movement. Well, it's sort of because time is and movement is much the same thing. Yeah? So it's a squeezing up, and if you look at the floorboards going down there, they all tend to converge. But that's how we, how that all, like I mean, from moment to from direction to direction. I don't know. Now it's continuous, but I'm not saying that it's individuated. Yeah. Likewise, for a woman, and this I'm only saying this because, but for men, farsightedness is sorry, looking forward, far away to the fore, if you like, is an important aspect of the man. Yeah, for some reason, this is some theory that I heard about. Yeah, now I'm not adhering to the theory. I'm merely just saying I'm just pointing in a direction. and there'll be some directions, I'll say. So I don't want you to look at the detail of the theory and says it's all wrong. Therefore the whole direction is wrong. If the direct, some of these would be the direction. If you wanted to look at your field, if you wanted to look at the new field, or if you wanted to look at your existing field, you just get somebody, and just go up and test anybody. Just walk up there and stand right in front of it and see the distance, the internal distance it occurs. Yeah. So there are field issues. Yeah, and it's not necessarily lines. Because a woman, from what I understand from that theory, her she has sort of a different type of field, but it's circular. She knows what's basically everything. Yeah, around. I'm going to pick a fuzzy number out, fuzzy logic, fuzzy boundaries, as 3 meters or something. Yeah, and that's her. I'm a 5, 6, 10, or whatever. But she's got this sort of field, her own field, where she knows basically. She's got eyes in the back of her head. I didn't want to say that, but it's not quite like that. But I didn't want to say that. It sort of sounds generalizing. But that's what the theory says. And the man's got this, so he hasn't a fucking clue. I have the stuff. Which is life is life. That's the way things go. But you can bring in that and the axis of but you got to bring in your own yourself, your uniqueness. Like even though you might hunt or gather stuff in groups, you got to sort of look at it in a slightly different way. And all you've really got are just the greenery what you see here. Now it's not like this, but the greenery here and the sky, yeah, because this is below and that's above and we're in between, yeah. That's so it's really, but it's in I'm sort of orchestrating this a little bit, and I shouldn't be. I don't mean to be pushing it a bit. But if any of you guys that really wanted to look at your own sort of sameness or things like that, um, in terms of fields and in terms of sort of maybe the direction that you might want to look at, given your own uniqueness, because I think everybody on the planet is unique. I think all beings are like they don't occupy the same space, so they're inertially different for a start, and we have inertial issues with the sun, and we have inertial issues with the moon. And I think that's a commonality. And the other commonality that's going around the world is that the sky ain't going to change. The sky is the sky. Whether you're in China, Russia, any fucking way, that up there is not movable. Not like reason. Because that beat. Although how it moves is, well, later. But the thing is, uh, ground. Yeah. So it used to be this. It's the old Hermeticist thing, as above, so below. But those guys would be sort of magi and sorcerers, not sorcerers, but magi and druids and things like that. Yeah, because that would be their job. You know, looking at the sky. That's all they can do. Now they're not looking. There's no dimensions at this stage. No dimensions whatsoever. There's no lines. Yeah, there's only line of sight, and all it is reading what you see. REA, Ria, read, real, reality. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to read that and write. Now, how do you write? You don't have stone implements. Although we're getting close to the age of stone, but you don't have stone implements. You know, how do you do it? Well, there's one way of doing it, and it's it'll be an old-fashioned video, and that's just a raft, pool of water, where you stake it out and you're able to observe these things. And that wouldn't be the only one. Some of those technologies and on the recording aspect would be like it just might be merely stones in the ground, because you've got to record the movements. Yeah, the movements, particularly specific movements when we start, looking at, let's say, not the sun and the moon. The I think I think Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is really the thing, yeah. But I think it's a sort of a different type of oh gosh arrangement. We're going to just look at Venus, and apparently what these guys said, night and loneliness. Remember, they got hammered a little bit on this because by distribute, and I would say that might be this distributive science, and that's why I'd like to sort of colonize science a bit, because it enables, not colonize, but not colonize, but communalize, if you like, a sense that people can actually do it without any political interventions and stuff, There's a huge political intervention at the moment, but I'm going to try and part of this is this, yeah. Um, so I already really got the sky for thousands and thousands of years. Now it's just sky, sky, sky. So now you're reading and writing and reading and writing. And then, Astro is Astarte, yeah, or it's an old goddess. So you got this, and all you're doing is looking at this thing that every time the sun comes out, it comes out, yeah. And every time the sun goes down in the evening, it comes out because it's visible. Yeah, it's Venus, but back then it was called something else. I don't know. I mean, in the Latin, I think it was called Lucifer. Like blue meaning light, fair meaning bring. Yeah, so just and this pattern will keep going on. But the other thing about Venus is that apparently it makes some sort of over a periodic time. Now this is all story. Yeah, I don't know whether it's true or not. But apparently over certain periods, 8 years and 40 years are one aspect. Yeah, and people would follow these. Remember the word I'm using, follow, because you've got to follow the track over a 40-year period just purely by reading. Yeah, and that's all they do. Thousands of years, thousands of years. Like, I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, there's the obvious. You're not going to the gym. You know, you're not heading out for a pint. You're going to be, the stars are there. You can't, like the kids come along. Remember, there's no dimensions. It's just pattern, regularity, and semblance. It's just pattern. That's all. So there's no lines or anything like that at this stage. Kids look at clouds and see whatever they want to see. They look at all these things and just give them names, animals. They didn't do that in one day. Do you understand the pattern of evolvement? Because it's a very, very simple. It's probably one of the most simplest things. That up there, there's significance here. And even if there wasn't significance, children will always name things no matter what, because it's always there. And it moves around, and this big yellow thing moves, and that other thing moves, and this moves, and that thing too. And every time this moving, there are causal issues on the planet. Now, is that too far fetched? I mean, like the sun heats you up. You can stand on the beach and, you wait for the moon to turn and you're drowned. You wouldn't expect it. Yeah? So what's up there does affect here. It's just the finery of it. I mean, I wouldn't look at tabloids and things like that. Horoscope is a different thing anyway, I think. I'm not sure. I think it relates to Horus or something like that, the Egyptian thing. But I wouldn't, it's not even, that degree of specificity, if you like, and the terms that I use, in my view, you know, just as a visual thing, because I don't know anything about this, just as a visual thing, can't explain it in those terms. You will not meet the man of your life, on Thursday. It's just, it's not that. It's a different, entirely different. It's not even a language. You have to turn it into a language, but that language would be vastly gone. Yeah, but recoverable. Definitely more for sure recoverable. Because don't forget that if you've got a globe with 7 million people on it, the sky doesn't lie, and nor does DNA. That is none of that is factual. Because I don't know if the sky will lie, and I don't know if DNA will lie or tell the truth. I don't know, but I don't have to know that to establish some sort of belief that might be, let's say, 6 or 7 degrees away from me, but which I might be able to promote. Yeah, promote the fifth place, promote the fourth place, third place, the first place, as the thing evolves and maybe the information that I get. But don't forget, at the very beginning of this whole these videos, I said this is an opinion and it's a story, and I don't have to be correct. I just have to give you plausibility. That's something that's more plausible than what you got now. Like you got it. You know, so you feel. So if you really want to dive into that thing, and there are people that are into this stuff, just bear in mind that in the distributive system as we have now, this stuff that I'm talking about is not going to happen. So your Marcus Aurelius Stoicism, all these sort of things, they're under threat from a system that will design your behavior for you. Yeah, with reason. Yeah, uh, and that's counter-revolutionary because I mean, it's not even counter. I mean, come on, guys, it's pretty obvious what's going on. Look, I'm good. I'm going to post a video after this. It's a video by a guy called his name. He's a professor of European archaeology. This is where I'm going to get difficult and studies. And he's a I think he's a knight. It's very few Cunliffe, yeah. But he is an entirely different view of where the Celts came from. And we're not talking about just Celts. We're talking about the whole Gaelic, the whole fucking nation thing, yeah. What he's talking about. Because he said that it's not. He mentioned there was only one guy that said it was an east to west migration. He was the only fella, and he was and there's no reason, and that theory even today still the thing just because the guy said it, yeah. But Barry Cunliffe, he's approached this in a multi-layered way, and it's very, very convincing actually, because that's where you get your horns and all these, the Gallic, war stuff, with the ravens and all that crack hanging out the head, and in metal and stuff. And he has something really interesting to say. I have to say that, and you might need it to bolster this story about your man in Nazareth, yeah, because because the texture and the direction in which he's going is going to make uh, things a lot more easier to understand, particularly when you talk about Jesus and King. Yeah, it's a different sort of arrangement, I think. And now you know something. It's only a different theory, you know, but I think it's better than the one they got. So he is divine, but not in the way we think. It's a place. And I'll explain that later on. But it's quite because I don't know if it's explained here. With your feet on the ground here, and a ball that's turning around, that's moving around the sun, that's in the universe. You got to understand your uniqueness in this bit, not your being, because the being is sort of absolute, sort of type of thing, yeah. But I'm talking not the being. Think of it as spirit. Your being is this, it's really difficult, in my head, or avatar, yeah. But the thing that sits outside is all sort of connected with this, where you are, the here, yeah. And you sort of need to know where the here was when Jesus was born, and it was predictable because even though the story about Herod killing all the firstborns and stuff like that may not be true or not true, the narrative is there. If you understand what I'm saying, yeah? Whether it's true, does it happen or not, somebody's inserted that narrative to coincide with that prediction. And that makes sense to me because he was predictable. But then again, so was John. And probably a host of other guys. And I don't know why those guys would necessarily be singled out. But John, from what I understand, was SM. Yeah, and that just I know it might have been the Aramaic version or whatever, but in the Greek term, like that would be connected to Aristotle's essence, life. Yeah, and that's what that would mean. And I think that Jesus made some sort of and just blew a few people's minds away. Yeah, that's what I think he did, and it was so convincing that it spread so quickly across Europe, and it was actually taken. It was moving quite quickly. I mean, it goes right through. I think it goes right. It goes right through. What do you call? What do you call it? Nero and all that stuff, and Caligula and stuff. Where they got given a hard time. But they weren't just in Rome. They weren't just in Rome. They're all over the shop. Yeah. And then I think the tribes from across the dark. See, the Gallic, according to Yaman, was up in Dacia as well. And Dacia, the current name for it is Romania. Yeah. And so they were all along that Danube area. Right. So I'll leave it at that. But I dropped that thing in, yeah, that video, Barry Cunliffe, yeah. It's worth a watch, particularly if you want sort of an alternative view as if you're on the if you're let's say if you're a sort of if you consider yourself Celt or Gaelic or anything like that, or Welsh or anything like that, or even Asturias, Basque, all that stuff. But if you're along that Atlantic mode of haplogroup type thing, you might be interested in what Barry Cunliffe has to say. Because that kicks in later when you start bringing in Plato, and then it makes an awful lot more sense. Well, in my book, anyway, but it's only a theory. It's not. It's always a story. But it's a better story than Genesis, because Genesis is a derivative of this earlier story. If you, if, I'm not, if you read it in a particular light, it's the same story, just different windows looking at the same thing. And then again, the way they use language then is not the way language is used today. Having said that, it's getting dark. So you can't bring necessary connection because your reasoning is slightly different. It's exploratory, it's discovery. It's not a conceptualization and then punching it into the not at the studio. Um, I wanted to talk to you about that very quickly. One of these things, these programs that was on years ago when I was a kid, and I don't know if anybody my age would remember, but it was called Play School. And the weird thing is that it just came into me there. There used to be stories that were told, but in order to access the story, they would say to you, and there's some sort of background, what windows are. And one window was circular, the other one was square, and the other one was rectangular. So where's the story today, children? It's through the round window, or through the triangular window. I mean, at that early age, like already sticking these shapes into you. I mean, and that's me. I mean, I remember that now. I think it was black and white. It might have been black and white before color TV came in. Yeah, but I definitely remember that. Yeah. Okay, I just thought I'd mention that. So what you can bring? You can bring yourself into 10 million years ago, and your field, uh, all the other stuff that you can bring in. You probably have no clue because at this stage, let's say at this time, uh, you, for some humans, I think they might have lost it. Like I said, maybe the ability to smell better or things like that. I mean, instinctual things that you really need to live. Yeah, but you don't need them here if you're living in and being fed. And all the things that a man would do or a woman would have to do are all being provided for you. You know, but then that's the lure. It's the demon. Nothing that this is real. Oh yeah, the other thing you can do is you can use perception. Yeah, like perceive. Yeah, uh, for English people. Yeah, for English speakers. Yeah, perceive is PER, and get this CEIVE. Yeah, I have to. What is it? I can't remember the fucking thing, but that's the thing. CEIVE. What is the CIEVE? I can't remember the rule. You have to follow the grammatical rule. Is that grammatical rule? What is it? I after C except after C. I before C. PERCEIVE. The way I spell it is, hold on a minute. CIE. Oh no no no. It's CEIVE. You can't turn them. You can't turn them unless it's you know uh, if you're using C and then E has got to come before I. Yeah, that's a rule, a grammatical rule. Yeah, and 400 years ago, grammar was what was learned, not necessarily language. Grammar, reading and then writing, because that was the thing. So when you individuate your words into separate vowels or syllables, the phonic and the connections to those phonics is a sort of would be an issue, uh, and how you can use when you're in this world. Yeah. Sorry. You can use inception because you got to assume that you conceive. Yeah. You got to assume. Like otherwise you can't bloody you can't make Mr. Blue Sky without in or whatever. And you might call it in but I think it's spirit and whatever, but that's inspiration is in spiritus, but that's just me. And for me, that's all waving around all the time. But the conception, as I've just said, look, this is bullshit. This one conception, man, woman, boom, and that there, little alpha, E merge and flower and its emergence. Yeah, you being into the planet. I mean, I'm not. I'm just. The words are there for me to use. My view is not tempered by the words, if that makes sense. The words are there. I'm just using, not the other way around. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but uh, and you can bring yourself. But the other thing is, if you wanted to sort of investigate yourself and you started thinking like that, and if you're thinking, let's say, what else can you do other than let's say, because people like to improve themselves. People are always doing mindfulness, and they try and improve themselves to be strong. There's some people go to the gym and because that's how they connect, and that's grand. Some people connect physically. There's no question because. I mean, it's like case in point. You have to connect physically with your It's just otherwise, why do you do it? I mean, a primitive level, why do you do it? Um, so yeah, so that's okay. That's okay. Sorry, I'm just uh, rambling. Yeah, I did that. Right, type of thing. If you were interested in actually carrying on, and if you wanted to read a bit more, you might be interested in your own field qualities. Yeah. You see, the thing is with the science, because all the science is there already, it's all generalized. Yeah, most of it's generalized. All you got to do is look at, in terms of your own field, is to internalize and be aware of that internalization. You just got to bring your existential gravitas back in here and just acknowledge your being. That's it. Don't let the man get it, or the thing get it. Yeah. Right. So I would look at maybe the Quantum Self by Dana Zohar. Yeah. That would be one book that, I definitely mull into again. I didn't read it all, but I'd read enough, and I didn't need to know the detail. I just needed to know the direction, in some respects. But it's quite because if no, I'm not saying it's quantum. It's not quantum, but it the I'm not saying it's not quantum. I'm not saying think of the direction and think of maybe vibration, like vibrational issues as well, rather than just make it. Look, I'll put it this way: in order to understand, think Mozart, pling plong, pling plong, pling, automatically mathematically correct. Yeah. Now all you got to do is add Oscar Peterson in there. Yeah, because now you got syncopation and now you got feel. A little bit more like that. Yeah. So it's not just the bare words or the bare notes, yeah, or the right that type of engagement, yeah, with conceptions maybe whatever. That doesn't take away from his genius at all. I'm not doing that. It's the method of engagement I'm talking about, and the content of that engagement. Whether it's like if you're the Barber of Seville, I don't know what he wrote, and he's supposed to be the guy. No, my Bob, no. For me, Karen Carpenter, or well, no, that was for the guys. Uh, Oscar Peterson or any of those guys, that brought syncopation in. Yeah, that was a real huge, huge gift. I mean, just, where do I begin? Otherwise, you wouldn't have music, right? How are we going? Oh, we would have music. You know what I mean? But just not so, uh, not as much causal contextualization, if you like. Yeah, I don't know. You're right. And no, when you go into this field, there's no affirming the consequent. That is begging the question. You cannot affirm your own negative. You cannot say anything negative about yourself. It's bullshit. Yeah. You can assess yourself, like on another, maybe that I can improve that or do that. But there's nothing negative about you, in my view. Yeah. That's it. It should be, that's a Thomas Hobbes type of thing. You know, to assume that the human being is some sort of animal and needs to be trained or command, the command jurisprudence type thing. John Austin. Just total command. But that's the same as what with the behaviors, not the behaviors, the EU crowd. They're just going to nail down. This is how you act. This is how you act as a crowd. And there's no organics. Yeah. Let me explain what I mean by the organics. There's a recent thing happened in a new building, a university. Biology, admissions, to physics, all this stuff. All these buildings, yeah. And instead of actually going in and putting in roads, what they did is just left the grass there as it was, and people actually the natural order, and they just made the choice themselves. Yeah. But in a distributive system, yeah, and they just walked across. In the distributed system, it's going to be paths here, directions here, and big signs saying keep off the grass. Now, I'm being facetious here, but I just want to give you a sort of a flavour, yeah? And that a couple of generations down the way, like, it's really nasty, yeah? What you can do, right, okay. So you have perception and see. Uh, when you think sept, yeah, percept, yeah. Try and attach that to the only current, and I think it was possibly immovable in the Roman Catholic Church would be the sept issue, yeah, September, yeah. So try and lock that in as a conception point, yeah, because because there's a lot of things. You see, you're not really the days of the week are just days. They're just references for to help you organize your cosmos space, yeah. Um, uh, so the days of the week, calendars and stuff like that, um, that's all. They have the Julian one, and everybody has their own. Like all different countries have their own and stuff like that. And that's when like one day it's same as the next, not quite, not these different regularity in the bit. Once you take the Julian calendar off and the Gregorian calendar, that's another thing, by the way. If anybody was interested in that type of stuff, the astrology stuff, and I really haven't a clue how it's put together, but I'm going to inject something in that maybe somebody might want to take account of. I don't know how your calculations are done, but I just bear in mind that before, let's say, the extent, the view of the world around about Jesus' time, yeah, was Ptolemaic. In other words, everything went around the planet. Yeah. Now it doesn't mean that everything went around the planet, because this is very, like all the seven dwarfs and all that. Yeah. It doesn't mean that everything went around Earth. What we're talking about is what was observed from Earth. Yeah, that's all. It's just a picture. Even though you've got all the things and gubbins going into the, you've got to contain the paradigm with the Ptolemaic system. That's on the assumption that the Ptolemaic system was the system from all these thousands of years that went before. It might very well have been the Copernican heliocentric view, which had gone before, and that might perhaps have made things very difficult for people to understand if their paradigm was based on Ptolemaic and not the other one. Plus, you've also got to factor in if you're doing a calculation, you've got to factor in that the numbers that are attached to all the days, yeah, they're just numbers. And I think there was some talk about, months being added and, days being added and all that crack, and 300 years missing and stuff like that or whatever, yeah. And there's all that stuff. But that there is referential stuff. It's not the stuff which is this planet, that sky. That's the stuff, yeah. Everything else, days of the week, months, all that stuff. It's just stuff. Yeah, it's just the referentials. Yeah, the real thing is that what kind of picture is up there on this thing, and what kind of picture is it not? What kind of picture is it not? We split that up into 12, I think. But like that's regularity and resemblance, nothing else. Just real. That's science, psyche. Yeah, not science, the concept. Yeah, because you might think I'm being a bit rude on science. I'm not. I'm totally not. I just don't want science to say it is the law of the universe, because it isn't. It's outer space. Universe means one verse, one truth. Yeah. So to call that the universe, that's a derogatory. And that's like saying Mark Carney with nation. It's a derogatory thing to say, to employ in your perhaps in your what paradigm. Yeah. But you just and not only that, but I mean the words I use. I am no model person, not in the slightest. So don't even think for a minute that, this, that, or the other. I'm not. I'm not that guy. I just, I've done the same thing as everybody else, perhaps more. Of course, some things I wouldn't have done. To the round. And I think that's it. She needs to personalize yourself. I mean, it's not. If you want to be a citizen or or a fireman or whatever like that. And even then, when you think of a fireman and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and policeman and stuff like that, they've got their own part because they're trained in because they will view like they will view things in a particular way, and it'll be different to the other guy. It's not so. I know really it's a bad thing to say, but Maslow's what do you call it? Hierarchy, not hierarchy. Maslow's thing with the hammer, to everything, every hammer thing, to every nail, hammer paradigm. Yeah, I can't put the words in the order. Sorry. Right, but that field thing, Danda Zohar, she did the condom cell. That was one thing. Yeah. The other thing that you might want to look at is, and might be quite interesting for you, if you're into vibrational issues, yeah, and which I think is a better explanatory, because when you use stone technology years ago, I think it's the vibration issue, yeah, because well, you can think there's aliens and stuff, and that's fine, yeah. Okay, so the other thing I'd been, yeah, just the being, because really what you're doing is if you were going to magic yourself in 10 million years ago, it would just be the being. You don't know what your body's going to be like. Yeah, it'll be whatever it is, uh, you know, given the environmental circumstances or whatever morphology kicked in. And for morphology, both up there and down, and physical as well. You might want to look at what do you call it? The Presence of the Past by Rupert Sheldrake. Yeah. Now, I don't know about Dan Zohar, but I know Rupert Sheldrake getting a lot of hit back. Yeah, and a lot of these people, but please understand, a lot of it is political science. It's a different type of arrangement, like this out of Africa thing. I mean, everybody, you know, there can be an explosion years ago, and then there's, but it's not explosion. It's an astro. It's a vibration issue, I think. Like somebody making, if you put eggs, flour, butter, and all that back in to make a cake, it's not going to make itself. You need, and then you need a different type of vibration, the molecules and stuff. And then you end up with, and you form it, yeah, and you pour your material in your cake mixture, and you take it out, and the purpose. for food, but that purpose is, yeah, yeah, it's all out style, But that bit is, it's easier. Sorry, how am I going to go? How do you go through this? Right, and another, so the last thing, Rupert Sheldrake, yeah, uh, very clever guy. I heard about him, sadly, uh, listen, all right. Listen, I listen, I worked down when I was consulting. I worked in Pfizer, at a place called Sandwich. Yeah, it was Endgame, Project Phoenix. It was Endgame. I met a good guy down there, David, and we spoke a lot about the world and stuff and how to make things right. And and Rupert Sheldrake's presence of the past human is real deal is about morphic resonance. Yeah, and morphic resonance is, in my view, potentially a huge opener in terms of industry looking ahead. Yeah, if you want to keep on with this, sticking a freaking thing on it, it's just you know you've got to be in the act, yeah, rather than the third man. That's listen, I'll have to do something with that third man, but yeah. So the other thing is, okay. The last thing I'd like to say is that we've got, what is it? How many consonants and vowels and all that? We're very limited, yeah. And these consonants and vowels, the way we organize them and stuff, and organize them into the bits and bobs, like, it's one alphabet, in the English alphabet, and there's not a lot to play with. There's five vowels and the rest are consonants, and consonants mean consonant, is sonata, sonar thing. So you're basically bouncing stuff off. The vowels were vowel to L, and that's why I sort of brought L in. I just thought it might make a little bit more connectivity in terms of your correspondence when you start using certain words, P five four form, that type of thing. So one ago. So it's 27 consonants, the vowels, and one of the things I asked myself, it was just quickly came, was fit for purpose. Yeah. Now you got to understand that the alphabet, like it's as an evolvement, over a certain amount of years. When I think they were initially Phoenician and then went into the Greek, and then and that ties in quite nicely for purpose later on. But in terms of fit for purpose, the vowels can't, and the way we have this stuff, it cannot sustain the degree and the extent of bifurcation and separating this in the physical and in the conception. It cannot deal with that. It's just too much, really. I mean, it's so much that it's been taken from you and given to something else, yeah? Because that is something else has more meaning and more meaning than you at the moment. I know you think left and right politics, Democrat and Republican, and either way and everything. But trust me, these hands are fucking way over there. That story, the left and right, Republican and Democrat story, that's way, way, way over there. You're in a different fucking position now. Perhaps a little bit out of our depth as it happens, but it's fixable, I think. So it's 27 consonants, blah, 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 fit for purpose for the human being. And you always have to accommodate that other paradigm that exists in the world, the non-being demon thing, because that has its own language. It's called, it's Robin, there's some language, and and the interconnectivity between something that we use as a human being, something that we use that is mandated, or how you use it, how the meaning of that use of that word within the corporation or non-being, that's a different thing. So basically that's it at the moment, and the only reason I said. Um, when you're coming through on sorry, just when you're coming through on a we're coming through years and years and years of and resemblance. Yeah. Now the assumption is that the world always revolves. Yeah, that it doesn't slow down, and that it's uniform. Yeah, that's the conceptual thing, that it doesn't slow down. But if it did slow down, how would you know? Well, that would be cesium, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, what happens if cesium slows down as well? Then we're starting to lose our reference. Remember that though that second or that the meter originally was some concoction, yeah, based on the sphere and 1,000th of the diameter or whatever like that, and that was notwithstanding it wasn't a sphere to begin with, yeah. And then when light and the speed of light came along, then they said, oh, it's over a meter. So really, what you've got a measurement system looking for a justification, yeah. Uh, I don't know if that makes sense. That's base 10. type of brain. That's everything's kilograms, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. That's not going to help your science at all. Everything's individuated now, and you got to look at things rather like perhaps maybe Rosicrucian. I mean, not you've got to look at life in order to and see how it evolves. But like that's Richard Attenborough, and everybody loves that guy. But in terms of purpose and things like that, yeah, actually, will is everywhere. You know, so I think that's it. And yeah, so you see, I don't know how this thing works. I'm not interested. I'm interested in the paradigm shift from one to the other. Because for me, this guy here, it's just reading and recording, reading and recording. That's all. And that sky is the same for everybody on the planet. Yeah, it's not something that you can move around the sun or move around it, and then it's fake news. I don't know if you get. I don't know if I'm making this point clear. The only other thing is actually you, and then you've got the ground. The ground we assume to be certainty, yeah, and the sky we assume to be certainty also, yeah. But those, this is not going to work too well. You're, we're little beings, and tiny little beings on this huge rock, yeah. And if you would poke out, let's say 1,000 or maybe a million miles, actually, and start coming back in. I mean, the relative positioning is quite clear, but it's not to do with really with the size. Notwithstanding that somebody of that size is going to tell everything all over the world, yeah, of the same size, that the universe works like this, and the universe is this size. Now, I have to be clear. When they decided that they're going to do that, that doesn't mean that what they discover is incorrect. It just means that is the rules or the principles of the universe. Yeah, sorry, the principles of outer space. You can't call it the universe because it doesn't fit. It's just space, outer space, and it's not a law because you can't assume law. You can't assume static laws on a moving vehicle. Yeah, what you do have is resemblance and semblance and a lot more. But I'm just using human stuff. Yeah, it's a lot more. You've got to look at signatures and things. Yeah, and it's just based on the pictures. Yeah, not no diagrams. So it's just an invented picture. An animal you put it up there, an animal you put it up there, and that's really where you need to look because what happens is that regularity, that maybe those regularities, would be becoming cyclical. Yeah, and part of that cyclic and part of that place, and they would be known not events, but known. What would I say? Because it extends past a human person's lifetime, we can't see it. Yeah. It would extend quite a bit, but it would be the age of doom, or the age of happiness, or the age of the, and for no other reason, but because that's how the vibration of things kicked in, yeah. But right now it's pretty bad patch at the moment. There's a lot of disconnect, and but and you might think I'm crazy, but that's fine also, But at the moment, I'm moving quite fast, yeah, but I'm moving quite fast in what this incremental thing. Uh, uh, there's no time. You see, you're watching it, but you may not be reading the video, which is a different thing. It's an internalization issue, and that's why it's starting at the start. But I did say it's a window, and you've got to start build that window. So that means shaking up some of your existing concepts and sort of say, "Well, hold on, in space and time, what the fuck is on here?" I mean, really, it's emotion. Everything's in motion. That it's arranged, that's fine. We know that we're not a ball, but it's sort of a different type of look. Uh, and I used a couple of words in a different video, and they're just bullshit words. It's just rubbish. But like it's a different type of thing. The only thing is, I really try and look at yourself. Because you come first. Yeah, I know it sounds really selfish. It's not selfish. Self. It's just self. SELF. Not fact. It's F. Yeah, SELF. And you may think that the ontological or the etymological origins of those words Don't tie up with blah blah blah. That's not the point. The point is they're here, and I can use them for my explanation. That's the point. So Resident Evil is here. Inception was here. Back to the Future. Actually, Back to the Future is pretty. I know can't time travel, but your man Doc Brown did explain something about Biff, and it was quite interesting. And it's actually quite an interesting, particularly giving. It is a dilemma, a dilemma. Lemma, I think, is a Greek letter. It's a dilemma. Uh, this is a long one, so I'm going to put it on the uh, YouTube. But to understand this regularity and resemblance, now and then you move through all the. Remember, this got lost because what happens is that you've got, it was always there up there, and I think that really it's sort of kicked out, as the sort of a thing, as the sort of thing. We ran about 300, like, I mean, I don't mean to mention Patrick, but that Patrick, if he's bringing Roman Catholicism or Roman Christianity into, a different type of environment, when things happen, and it's a slightly different type of arrangement. I think he was Roman, and he was bringing Roman Catholicism, and Roman Catholicism, it's a different type of engagement. Right. So let me another sort of half explain that. Is that you're down as far as 325, and that's when the G5 get together. Yeah. There was Rome, all the patriarchs, Rome, Antioch, I think there's one in Nicaea, Alexander, and I'm going to miss the last one. Rome, Athens. Would Athens be one? I don't know. I don't think Athens is one. Rome there. And there's five of them, yeah? And these are the guys that are going to lay out the dogma and the policies and how the efficient cause is going to go and how the final purpose is going to go. But what they did is they just put a big, there's this myth blanket, it's a template, basically follows. There's certain things that happen. Born of a born of a deity, yeah. That's the immaculate conception. Then the other thing is, did some great works. But all these sort of formulas. There's a formula, yeah, and it's all the same with Hercules and I think Achilles was one as well, and Oedipus, maybe Jason. Is it Jason? He's one. Yeah, I think he was one, and Hercules for sure. So you got these special demigods or god type guys, yeah, and they all get this, the Jewish ministry and then finish up, yeah. But and that's some sort of it's a storytelling blanket, it's anthropic type of storytelling. That was what it was back then, I think, and they had it formalized, that was the form, the myth thing, yeah. But and they put that over Jesus, and I think that was a mistake. But it's nothing, in my view, it's nothing to do with the formula. It is to do with his connection with that freaking star, yeah, because that at that point, that was a very special time, because certain things. But there was something that came out like let's just roll in. I mean, a lot of this is, I said, a lot of this you take with a pinch, but let's roll in that that somebody goes to Herod, that's got this amazing, ability to read the sky and knows that some sort of type of event is coming, and it's basically this star shaped. I don't know if I may have said, the star, yeah. The star is 5 points, yeah, and that's where you get the 5 point star. And pentangles later on in mythology, they'll later on pentangles. Was that it's not strictly that, it's pagan also, yeah, you know, and it's all pagan poetry, yeah. That is exactly what it is, because in Pythagoras' time, it's the connection, and it's not, it's by he just using music. It's the four, not the poetry. So it's the ratios, yeah, and that is has never really been the. I mean, we had music come in, but it was 15, 1600, or I can't remember. I think Peshbel's canon was the first one, and then you got the mathematician. No, he's a genius, but he's a mathematician, and then you get some guy up there that has never played the piano, and he just sort of puts it together. And that's discovery. That's not just that's not repetition. That's I've heard some of these things. I mean, there's no way I could, you know. I mean, yeah. Anyway, right. Uh, I'm just talking about the syncopation and the feel that was brought to the music, rather than, I think you know what I mean, and it's that type of thing. It's the same sort of, I know it's going to sound really daft, but you got to think in that type, think the crack, or maybe if you're some sort of Delta Force or some football team or some Delta Force like does this freaking thing. I think I mentioned this before, but that they're all looking at each other after the mission, all before the mission. Yeah, if it's a really, really, really just, not coming back type job. And they all look at each other. And no words, but there's something else there. Yeah. And we might be afraid of killing that. That's the type of thing that you need to take back 10 million years ago because it would have been developed then. So all you got the resemblance, yeah. And then what happens is you got this pattern. And yeah, so somebody comes along to Herod, and it's all through the Bible anyway. It's predicted, but of course, you can predict it. Like they call it prophecy, but you can predict. It's predicted, because of the patterns in the sky, and if you looked at it enough times, regularly, there might be long cycles, there might be short cycles, but yeah, but if you're looking at the Aphrodite, Venus, Astarte type thing, Lucifer, it's the same things. You're talking about the same thing, the morning star and the evening star, how they and the patterns it makes in the sky and things like that, And that was the star. The rest was the heavenly luminaries, I think. Oh, I don't, something. It's just a different story. Don't know what the Latin said or the vulgar Latin or Greek. I have no idea because that's the way. But I don't care. This stuff is here and it can be used. So basically, the story is that he went and killed everybody. Herod went and killed everybody's firstborn, and you got to understand that at that time, like I mean, the nice picture of all that whole area is entirely different back then as it was here. But what you had Phoenicia. Yeah, Phoenicia, all the Phoenicians, yeah, in one country or one thing, yeah. And then you have and I don't know if they're Roman or what, right? They're not Roman. They're total on the Gallic, Phoenician, I think, in like Berbers. Yeah, I think Berbers are Celts, the Lusitania tribes and so on. They're all the same thing, up to Dacia, Roman, and what is now Romania, and they're right through Iran and right through Turkey, yeah, and possibly up in Scythia, which is pretty close to the Urals, yeah. So it's quite a long migration, and this migration and this build-up so it's gone on for in Plato's words might have gone on, let's say, no, it's not in his Plato's words. This is where I'm drawing a lot of inference, a lot of I'm bringing imagination to it, and I'll make it. But I don't want to do it yet because I need a bit of credibility and clout that I'm not able to give. That clout is with Barry Cunliffe because he said that just because somebody said it 300 years ago doesn't, and without the science, yeah, he says all the philology, all the DNA, everything, including the pots, the food, where and what have you. That is all a west to east migration, and that fits a lot better with the Hebrew story because Eber is a river in Malaysia, and not Malaysia, in Spain, Eber. And my I heard that the Hebrew means uh, those who cross the Eber. But I heard that. Now I don't know. I don't even know how that fits in. But I added it in here. It's the same way of that. Somebody asked me a question and I know the answer. I only know the answer to that question he asked me. Doesn't mean I know everything about it. Yeah, it's just all very convenient. Yeah, for me anyway. So what's next? Right. So somebody was coming along. Now it doesn't have to be Jesus or John or whatever like that because they were 6 months apart. Yeah, but they're all sort of maybe a band or something like that. And for some reason, Jesus is or John, I think, was the because he was the one that was doing all the baptizing. So he'd be the one that you know. Uh, it didn't make any sense to me because then Jesus is in the mantle now. And I shouldn't. I put this in the thing. Do not look if you because. Perhaps in order to carry on with that story and how it pans out, I think it might be a better idea to go to Barry Cunliffe. And I'm just going to leave it at there and I'm going to post this video first, yeah?